Hi esteemed logicians. Welcome to the Logical Christ channel. In this video, we will examine claims of 25 scientific miracles in the Quran. We will logically examine the teachings of Islam pertaining to current scientific understanding. Sit back and relax. We will be back after this short intro.
For us Muslims, we don't use our logic.
The thesis. The concept of scientific miracles, or ijaz ilmi, in the Quran posits that the text contains scientific facts that were unknown at the time of its revelation. This video will critically examine the claims of 25 alleged scientific miracles, analyzing the hermeneutical methods used to connect ancient verses with modern scientific discoveries. We will investigate whether these Quranic verses can be interpreted as a form of divine prescience or if the claims are a result of a retrospective reading of the text. This will involve clarifying issues of vagueness, pre-existing knowledge from other civilizations, and the danger of conflating religious purpose with scientific explanation. The assertion. The concept of scientific miracles in the Quran aims to establish its divine authenticity. Conversely, even a single scientific blunder would falsify the Quran's claim to divine revelation. We acknowledge that the Quran may contain scientific realities suggested by its verses. However, we assert that those seemingly scientific claims are often possible only by stretching one's interpretation. Lastly, a well-known Muslim apologist acknowledged that the scientific miracle arguments have already been debunked.
The scientific miracles argument in the Quran got debunked. Yeah, I hope my tajweed was on point. Because we are making claims about the Quran and specific verses, and because we was, not myself, I would say, but a lot of people were very insecure because of the scientific, discoveries or whatever it may be, and we was trying to fit the scientific narrative into the Quran, which was a big mistake because it's as good as we were making science the guideline for the Quran to be accepted. This is nonsense. Yeah, we take the Quran, not science. To hell with science. Science changes tomorrow, today. They talk about the Big Bang. Now there's new studies or whatever, new findings that there was no Big Bang. So my point is what? You cannot come and say this verse here is a scientific miracle, is a scientific fact. Why? Not because the Quran is wrong, because science changes, number one. Number two, who told you that verse in the Quran is talking about what you're ascribing to it? Simple as that. So that's why I repeat it one more time for my fans, those Islamophobes. The scientific argument, the scientific miracles in the Quran is debunked.
The argumentation. 1. Embryology. In Quran 23:12-14, Muslims claim that it describes the stages of human embryonic development, arguing that these descriptions align with modern embryology. This claim is sufficiently vague that their alignment with modern embryology can be seen as a retrospective interpretation rather than a miraculous scientific foresight. These descriptions could plausibly reflect macroscopic observations or common knowledge available in ancient times, potentially influenced by rudimentary embryological observations of animals. 2. The Big Bang and the expansion of the universe. In Quran 51:47 and Quran 21:30, Muslims claimed it as a parallel to the Big Bang theory, and the latter verse as a direct reference to the expansion of the universe, concepts that were only discovered in the 20th century. These claims often rely on reading modern scientific discoveries into the verse, rather than deriving precise scientific predictions from it. The language is broad enough to accommodate various interpretations, and attributing specific 20th century scientific theories to these verses requires a significant degree of hermeneutical stretching that goes beyond their plain meaning. 3. The function of mountains. In Quran 78:6-7, Muslims claim that mountains have deep roots, similar to pegs or stakes, that anchor the earth's crust and prevent it from shaking. This is seen as a reference to the role of mountains in plate tectonics, a field of geology that developed much later. The verse's language does not offer specific geological details about deep roots, isostasy, or the mechanics of plate tectonics. The idea of mountains anchoring the earth to prevent shaking can be understood as a poetic or phenomenological description of stability, rather than a precise scientific statement about crustal dynamics. Muslims need a retrospective interpretation that stretches the text beyond its literal and historical context to make it scientific. 4. Iron from space. In Quran 57:25, Muslims claim that the phrase sent down is interpreted as an indication that the iron found on Earth did not originate here but was delivered from space by meteorites. They aligned it with the scientific understanding that the iron in our solar system was formed in supernovae and then incorporated into Earth. Interpreting sent down in the context of iron as a precise scientific statement about its extraterrestrial formation or delivery is a retrospective reading. The verse's primary purpose, consistent with other uses of this idiom, is likely theological. Like all resources, the ultimate origin and power reside in the heavens. The text lacks the specific scientific vocabulary that would genuinely predict complex astrophysical processes unknown until the 20th century. 5. The barrier between waters. In Quran 55:19-20, Muslims claim this verse as a description of a scientific phenomenon where fresh water and salt water meet but do not immediately mix due to a barrier. Attributing this verse to a precise scientific understanding of haloclines or thermoclines, which are complex oceanographic phenomena understood through modern scientific methods, is a retrospective interpretation. The verse's primary intent appears to be a poetic description of God's power in maintaining natural distinctions, rather than a detailed scientific explanation of fluid dynamics. 6. The sun and moon in orbit. In Quran 21:33, Muslims claim that this verse states that the sun, moon, and all other celestial bodies are swimming in an orbit, attributing it to modern science that the sun is not stationary but moves in its own orbit within the galaxy. In the Middle East, past civilizations developed sophisticated astronomical observations and understood that celestial bodies followed predictable paths or orbits in the sky. This knowledge predates the Quran. Attributing a precise scientific understanding of galactic motion to this verse is a retrospective interpretation. 7. Forelocks in the brain. In Quran 96:15-16, Muslims claim that the term forelock is interpreted as the frontal lobe of the brain, which is responsible for reasoning, planning, and conscious behavior. They refer to a lying, sinning forelock as a reflection of the frontal lobe's role in our moral decisions. The phrase lying, sinning forelock is idiomatic, much like saying a deceitful tongue or a greedy hand. It does not offer any specific neurological or anatomical details that would genuinely point to the frontal lobe's complex functions in moral decision-making. The connection to modern neuroscience is a retrospective interpretation. 8. The sky is a protected ceiling. In Quran 21:32, Muslims claim this as a reference to the Earth's atmosphere, which acts as a protective shield against harmful elements from space. The verse's primary emphasis appears to be on God's power in establishing the heavens as a stable and beneficial element of creation. Attributing a precise scientific understanding of atmospheric layers, ozone, or radiation belts to this ancient text is a retrospective interpretation, reading modern scientific discoveries into the Quran. 9. The deep sea darkness. In Quran 24:40, Muslims claim that this verse is seen as a description of the deep ocean, where light is completely absent below a certain depth, foreshadowing the understanding of modern oceanography. The verse uses this imagery as a powerful parable to describe the state of disbelievers, likening their spiritual ignorance and lack of guidance to overwhelming physical darkness. Attributing this verse to a precise scientific understanding of the complex details of modern oceanography is a retrospective interpretation. The language is evocative and metaphorical, serving a theological purpose to illustrate spiritual darkness, rather than providing a detailed scientific prediction about the deep sea. 10. The flight of birds. In Quran 67:19, Muslims claim that this verse is a description of the intricate mechanisms of bird flight, which are governed by specific physical principles of lift and thrust, a scientific phenomenon that was not fully understood until the principles of aerodynamics were developed. The ability of birds to fly, spreading and folding their wings, was a readily observable phenomenon in ancient times. Attributing this verse to a foreshadowing of advanced aerodynamic principles requires a retrospective interpretation that reads modern scientific knowledge into the verse. 11. The creation of everything in pairs. In Quran 51:49, Muslims claim that this verse is taken to be a broad statement about the dualistic nature of the universe, such as the pairing of male and female in living things, even the pairing of subatomic particles and other fundamental dualities in nature. The concept of mates or pairs is a very common and observable phenomenon in nature, particularly in the biological realm. This pairing is evident to any observer and was certainly known in ancient times, a concept readily understandable without modern scientific knowledge. 12. The water cycle. In Quran 23:18-19, along with other verses, claimed by Muslims as a description of the water cycle. The Quran describes how rain falls from the sky, is stored in the ground as groundwater, and then causes vegetation to grow. This is seen as a detailed and accurate account of a complex hydrological process. This understanding of the basic water cycle was common knowledge in many ancient civilizations, particularly those dependent on agriculture. The Quranic description, while accurate in its basic portrayal of these observable phenomena, lacks the detailed scientific understanding of evaporation, condensation, atmospheric circulation, and the precise quantitative aspects of the modern hydrological cycle. 13. The atmosphere is smoke. In Quran 41:11, Muslims claim that the word smoke is used to describe the initial state of the universe's atmosphere, and this aligns with the modern cosmological understanding of the early universe. Attributing this smoke to the specific, highly technical understanding of the early universe's plasma state, quark-gluon plasma, or the opaque conditions before recombination is a significant retrospective interpretation. 14. The sun's light and the moon's light. In Quran 25:61, Muslims claim that this is seen as a distinction that aligns with modern astronomy, which confirms that the sun produces its own light through fusion, while the moon merely reflects the sun's light. Ancient Greek philosophers like Anaxagoras from the 5th century BCE explicitly stated that the moon derives its light from the sun, and this knowledge was present in various forms in other ancient civilizations. While the Quranic verse is accurate in its description of observable phenomena, it does not present a scientific revelation unknown at the time. 15. The gender of the spider. In Quran 29:41, Muslims claim that the original Arabic text of this verse uses a feminine form of the word for spider, implying that it is the female spider that builds the web, a subtle scientific detail that could not have been known to an illiterate person in the 7th century. The primary purpose of this verse is clearly metaphorical and theological. Attributing a specific biological insight about spider behavior to this grammatical gender is a retrospective interpretation that stretches linguistic convention to fit a modern scientific observation. 16. The lowest land on earth. In Quran 32:4, Muslims claim that the lowest land is the lowest point on Earth's land surface. They asserted that this is a geographical fact that could not have been known to anyone in the 7th century. The Dead Sea's significantly low elevation relative to its surroundings, and its unique characteristics, would have been empirically observable to inhabitants and travelers in the region long before the 7th century CE. Attributing a detailed, modern scientific discovery to this verse relies on selecting one possible interpretation of an ambiguous phrase. 17. The 7 layers of the atmosphere. In Quran 2:29, Muslims claim that the phrase 7 heavens is a reference to the 7 layers of the Earth's atmosphere, predicting modern atmospheric science. The concept of 7 heavens is not unique to the Quran and predates Islam by many centuries. It was a common cosmological idea in ancient Near Eastern cultures, including Mesopotamian, Babylonian, and Jewish traditions. This is a retrospective rereading that superimposes modern scientific knowledge onto a phrase rooted in ancient cosmological beliefs. 18. The male determines the gender of the offspring. In Quran 75:37-39, Muslims claim that the reference to the drop of semen and the subsequent creation of the male and the female implies that it is the male's sperm that determines the gender of the baby. This is a scientific fact that was unknown until the discovery of chromosomes in the 20th century. In ancient times, it was widely observed that both male and female contributions were necessary for reproduction. Various theories existed regarding the determination of sex, with some ancient Greek thinkers, like Aristotle, proposing that the male semen played a dominant role in shaping the offspring, including its sex. The Quranic verses, by mentioning a drop of semen followed by the creation of the male and the female, can be seen as a descriptive observation of the reproductive process as it was understood in a general sense, rather than a specific scientific revelation about sex determination at a chromosomal level. 19. Pain receptors in the skin. In Quran 4:56, Muslims claim that this is a reference to the pain receptors that are located in the skin, a medical fact in the modern era. It is a matter of common, observable experience that severe burns cause extreme pain initially, but if the burn is deep enough, the affected area eventually becomes numb because the nerve endings are destroyed. People in ancient times would have observed this phenomenon through injuries, accidents, and warfare. They might not have understood the microscopic biological mechanism of pain receptors, but the macroscopic reality of skin's role in feeling pain and the loss of sensation in deeply burned tissue was an empirical observation. 20. The female honeybee. In Quran 16:68-69, Muslims claim that the Arabic verbs used in this verse are interpreted as a precise detail indicating that the worker bees, which are female, are the ones who build the hives and gather the nectar. Aristotle, from the 4th century BCE, extensively studied bees and correctly noted the drone's idleness and the worker's industriousness, even if he misidentified the queen as a king. Beekeeping has been practiced for thousands of years across various ancient civilizations. Ancient beekeepers and naturalists, through close observation, would have been acutely aware that the vast majority of bees actively involved in building hives, foraging for nectar, and producing honey were of a certain type. 21. The communication of ants. In Quran 27:18, Muslims claim that this verse is cited as evidence that ants communicate with each other. Modern miraculousness has shown that ants have a complex system of communication. It simply portrays an ant issuing a warning, a concept that would be easily understood by an ancient audience as a form of communication. It is an observable phenomenon. Interpreting this verse as a precise scientific prediction of complex ant communication systems is a retrospective interpretation that reads modern scientific knowledge into a narrative. 22. The weight of clouds. In Quran 13:12, Muslims claim that the term heavy clouds is seen as a description of the immense weight of clouds, a fact that can be easily overlooked but is scientifically true. This is not a hidden scientific fact that required advanced instruments to discover. The observable phenomenon of clouds carrying water that then falls as rain logically implies that they are heavy. The Quranic verse uses accessible, descriptive language to refer to a readily apparent characteristic of certain clouds. Attributing this to a miraculous scientific revelation about the precise tonnage of water in a cloud is a retrospective interpretation. 23. The role of the wind in pollination and rain formation. In Quran 15:22, Muslims claim that the wind plays a crucial role in both the pollination of plants and the process of rain formation. Scientifically, winds carry pollen from male to female plants, and they also carry water vapor and microscopic salt crystals or dust, which act as seeds for the formation of raindrops. The verse accurately describes observable roles of wind in nature, but interpreting it as a precise scientific prediction of modern concepts like microscopic cloud seeding or the exact mechanism of wind pollination at a cellular level is a retrospective interpretation. 24. The three veils of darkness in the womb. In Quran 39:6, Muslims claim this as a reference to the three layers that protect the fetus in the womb. These are identified as the abdominal wall, the uterine wall, and the amniotic sac with its surrounding membranes, foretelling modern embryology. interpreting three darknesses as a precise scientific description of the abdominal wall, uterine wall, and amniotic sac is a retrospective interpretation that reads modern embryological knowledge into a phrase that was likely understood in a more general, metaphorical, or observational sense. 25. The distinctness of fingerprints. In Quran 75 3-4, Muslims claim this as a reference to the uniqueness of human fingerprints, an acknowledgement of fingerprints as a unique identifying feature of every individual, a fact that was not scientifically established until much later. Interpreting make complete his fingertips as a direct reference to the unique identifying patterns of fingerprints is a retrospective interpretation that reads modern scientific discovery into a verse that is more broadly concerned with the divine power of resurrection and the intricate nature of human creation. There are more Quranic verses that Muslims claim as scientific miracles, based on their belief. But upon examining these verses, Muslims clearly fall prey to their own confirmation bias as well as consistent retrospective interpretations. The conclusion: in examining the claims of scientific miracles within the Quran, it becomes evident that numerous verses are observable. A critical analysis reveals a consistent pattern of interpretations often stem from confirmation bias and retrospective readings. Muslims claiming these scientific miracles tend to interpret vague Quranic passages in light of contemporary scientific knowledge, imposing scientific predictions onto the text itself. This approach often rests on the assumption that Prophet Muhammad and the people of his era were entirely unaware of basic scientific observations and ancient knowledge prevalent in other civilizations. Yet, as our arguments have demonstrated, many of the phenomena cited as miracles such as the water cycle, the general stability of mountains, or the distinction between fresh and salt water were observable or understood to some degree in antiquity. Here's Dr. David Wood with an ex-Muslim on the significance of the scientific miracles in the Quran.
The first thing or the last thing that had me attached to Islam was scientific miracles. I found, when I compared Islam to Christianity, I found many topics that Christianity has valid arguments against Islam, but I was like, how about scientific miracles? I couldn't get over that. So I had to do my own research to come to a conclusion. And I picked the most famous topics. I started with them to find for myself, not for anybody else. And when I found the truth, then that's it. It was the last thing for Islam.
So you saw problems with Islam, but there was something holding you there. Still, this idea that this had to come from God because of these scientific miracles.
Yes.
And then I guess you eventually looked into the ones you thought were the best examples of scientific miracles.
Yeah.
And so you must have concluded that they're not really scientific miracles.
Because all these years that we spent, they have been telling us, how come Muhammad knew these things before scientific discoveries? It must be God who revealed these things. And they are talking about embryology, they are talking about cosmology, they are talking about sciences in the seas, and all these things. And we read books, we saw TV programs in Morocco, we saw scholars explaining them. At school, it's part of our curriculum at school. So you grow up thinking it's for granted. There are scientific miracles in the Quran.
And that was by the way, that was the first real argument I was given for Islam. A Muslim imam sat me down to watch this video on these scientific miracles. And what I noticed over and over again, they would quote a Quran verse, and they would talk for like 5 minutes about science with all these awesome graphics. And then they would say, how could Muhammad have known all these things? And I'm looking at the verse going, is that what the verse actually said? Because I didn't catch that in the actual verse. But
yes.
Looking at all the 5 minutes of graphics and so on, you think, wow, how could Muhammad have known all that?
Let's start with the most famous one. You can read 23:12-14.
So embryology.
Yes, embryology. Because that's probably the most famous one.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Surah 23, verses 12-14. I'll read the Haleli Khan. They insert some words as far as creating man out of clay and so on. So they insert like Adam and so on. But so this is the Haleli Khan translation. And indeed we created man, Adam, out of an extract of clay, water and earth, here they put. Thereafter we made him, the offspring of Adam, as a nutfa, mixed drops of the male and female sexual discharge, that's commentary, and lodged it in a safe lodging, they say womb of the woman here. Then we made the nutfa into a clot, a piece of thick coagulated blood. Then we made the clot into a little lump of flesh. Then we made out of that little lump of flesh bones. Then we clothed the bones with flesh, and then we brought it forth as another creation. So blessed be Allah, the best of creators. Little side note, that was from Abdul Ibn Abi Sar, that blessed be Allah, best of creators.
To summarize it, we have clay, we have a drop, a sperm drop, we have a clot, a blood clot, and then we have a lump of flesh, and then we have bones, and then we cover the bones with flesh. Do you think that's something mind-blowing?
No.
Exactly. Have you seen like a skeleton by itself when anybody went to see their kid the first time and say, did you see a skeleton there? No, you never see that.
You would need it. So you're pointing out, like right here in the development, it goes from the fluid, then it becomes a blood clot.
Yes.
Then it becomes a lump of flesh, and then the lump of flesh becomes bones, and then those bones are clothed with flesh. So you're saying, when is there just bones before they're clothed with flesh?
You studied medicine, right?
I studied, yeah, I have a biology degree. That's not right.
Okay. Did they teach you these stages?
No, these are not the correct stages. It gets even worse when you go to what Muhammad said about them in the hadith, because he gives you a timeline. He says it's 40 days as the drop of fluid, and then 40 days as the blood clot, and so on. So that's like really, really wrong.
The most, I say, the argument that was really debunked this for me is when I found out the Greeks had this before the Quran.
Hippocrates, Aristotle, and then later Galen.
Galen had them the same way, and Galen was before the Quran. So it was a spread common knowledge everywhere, including Arabia. And people just thought that's the right stages of the fetus. And Muhammad just got that knowledge, put it into a verse. Where is the miracle here?
No, there's not. And you see, it's some things they knew, right? Like they understood, hey, man has sex with a woman, and it's got something to do with semen. They also thought it had a lot to do with blood, because women have a monthly menstrual cycle, and then it stops. So they're thinking in terms of blood clots. Plus, people had miscarriages and so on. So people at the time had an understanding of certain stages. When Muhammad goes beyond that, it's either clearly being copied from people like Hippocrates and Galen, or it's just wrong. But
the studying thing, when I went to the commentaries, I wanted to read more. The hadith and the commentaries, they believe that the spirit is not breathed into the fetus until he is or she is 4 months old. After 120 days, he's not alive. And that's a clear scientific error. And until now, some schools in Islam, you can have abortion before the 4th month.
I've seen Muslim politicians.
120 days.
I've seen Muslim politicians in the West say, as far as Islam is concerned, abortion is fine up through 4 months.
Exactly, because they believe he's not alive yet based on the Quran. And this is a clear problem for Muslims they have to deal with.
So they're saying, and you pointed out, this is their go-to example of a scientific miracle in the Quran. These are stages that were already described by other people. And even in the hadith where it gives the 40 days, that's from the Talmud. So Muhammad is just hearing things from all around him and jumbling it all together. And then they say it's a miracle when, guess what? Galen got some things right. He also got some things wrong. And the wrong things all end up in the Muslim sources too.
Yes. Let's pick another one.
Okay.
You want to talk about, let's say, the Big Bang in the Quran?
Yeah, heard that one 1,000 times.
I say, have those who disbelieved not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joined entity? Joined entity, for them, it was like a tiny spot that exploded, and that's where the whole universe came from. And then we separated them and made from water every living thing. That's Surah Al-Anbiya, which is 21:30. So how do we respond to that?
Well, even looking at what it says, they're saying this corresponds to Big Bang cosmology. But if you look at what it actually says, and this was another theory that was common at Muhammad's time, it's called the cosmic egg theory. Like the heaven and earth were together as one thing, and then in creating, God separates them.
But isn't the Bible say the same? Doesn't the Bible say the same thing?
Lots of different people had the same thing.
Shamim and Ha'art, the heavens and earth were one thing. God created one thing, called it heavens and earth, and then separated them later.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So he just copied a biblical knowledge, and they are talking about it as a miracle that nobody mentioned it before Muhammad.
And what's interesting here is they want to say that the description in the Quran of earth and heaven being separated, that's the Big Bang.
An explosion.
That's not the Big Bang, right? The earth wasn't there already with the heavens, and then they get separated. So, the Quran doesn't line up. In other words, a cosmologist is not going to say, yeah, the earth was already there, and then it was separated out. But two, yes, other groups were saying this at the time. And so how in the name of common sense is this miraculous scientific knowledge?
Another one they mention a lot, they say the two seas are separated by unseen barrier. And you can see it in many surahs. One of them is 55, 19, 20. In two surahs, actually, not many. He released the two seas meeting one another. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgresses. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's amazing. All the Quran here is saying is that, hey, over here is water you can drink, and over here is water you can't drink. Everyone knew that. When I read the commentaries, they said the barrier is land.
That's true.
There's land. So there's water you can drink over here, water you can't drink over here, and then there's land in between them. And the point is actually a decent point. Like, look at how God set things up.
Yes.
But they're saying, no, this is talking about a barrier between fresh seas and so on, and they get all technical. It's like he's saying something very simple here.
They play on words most of the time. And they say that Jacques Cousteau, the French Jacques Cousteau, they say he became a Muslim. When I digged into his life, I read his biography. Actually, I went and I even had footage of his grave, and he's Catholic with a cross on his grave, and they say he became a Muslim because of this. He never said that. He never mentioned it. But it's very known in the Muslim world that Jacques Cousteau became a Muslim because he discovered this scientific
I always heard that.
miracle.
I heard Neil Armstrong, found something and so on. So
he became a Muslim. He heard the azan on the moon.
Yeah, it is strange how many things get made up. But
I hope you learned from this video. Comment down below with your thoughts on this logical examination of the scientific miracles in the Quran. Until next time.
Thinking with Logical Christ.